Welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer for NC State on SI, Tucker Sennett, joining you here today to talk some NC State football. We're here in week 6, halfway point of the football season for the Wolfpack. Lots of stuff going on around the NC State athletic program, so it'll be more of a basketball heavy week because we got ACC tip off, but want to talk about some football stuff today before we get going on that. So I figured because we're at the halfway point, it would be nice to talk about some of the nice surprises for NC State through the first 6 weeks. So I've identified 3 players that I'm going to talk about today in this shorter episode that have been a pleasant surprise for head coach Dave Doran and his coordinators. 2 offensive players and 1 standout defender that have really thrived. 2 of these guys are new players brought in the transfer portal, and they've done really well for this NC State team. But we start on the offensive side of the ball with sophomore wide receiver Terrell Anderson, who has really become one of the most reliable wide receivers on this NC State team, if not the most reliable. Anderson's been phenomenal through the first 6 games of the season. Obviously, had that monster performance against Duke when he caught 6 passes for 166 yards and a pair of touchdowns, 2 of his 3 touchdowns on the season. Um, Anderson's developed into a really nice target both out of the slot and as a deep shot guy. He's averaging 18.5 yards per catch, a really impressive number, but he's shown that he can do a little bit of everything. He can catch those short passes. He took that screen pass 75 yards to the house in the Duke game. He's now going to be returning punts. And this was a guy that during fall camp we were talking about in a position battle for just a starting role with true freshman wide receiver Teddy Hoffman, who was supposedly pushing for that slot receiver gig on the Wolfpack as a starter. And now it seems like Anderson's basically eliminated him entirely, taken away his role as a punt returner as well after Hoffman had some issues at that spot. And Anderson has proven to be probably the most versatile and successful wide receiver on this Wolfpack team so far, with that monster game accounting for a lot of his stats. But still, I mean, throughout the season, he's been very consistent, hanging around 3 to 4 catches. Just had another 2 catch for 50-yard game against Campbell, hauled in a touchdown in that one, proved he could be a deep ball threat, and just is off to a really strong start this season that I don't think a lot of people totally expected, given we were being told it was being alluded to that there was more of a risk of him not being the starter this season over Hoffman. So a very pleasant surprise for first year offensive coordinator Kurt Roper there. I'm sure they were confident in his development, but I don't think they expected this level of explosiveness from Anderson. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, it's always very helpful to bring in experienced guys that have played a lot of football, no matter what level it is. They just tend to figure things out. And Kean Sloan is a guy who's played at the JUCO level. He went to Utah State, didn't get a ton of playing time his first year there, and then figured some things out late in his second year there, and thought his college career was over until the junior college transfer eligibility rule came into effect because of Diego Pavia and everything that happened with him. So Sloan got that extra year. He jumped in the portal. DJ Elliott finds him and plugs him into this NC State defense that was desperate for playmakers. And boy, has Sloan been an incredible playmaker for this NC State team. He's got 28 total tackles through the first 6 games. He did miss half of the Duke game, maybe more than that, maybe more like 3/4. Got hurt in that one, had to leave. Sloan has one of the best PFF grades through the first 6 weeks. I know PFF isn't perfect, but it is a good gauge on, what a guy can do that's not just in the stat sheet. And Sloan is a guy that just has 1 sack and the 28 tackles, and that game-winning interception against Virginia. But he does so much for this team in terms of moving around in that jack linebacker spot. That's kind of an edge rusher that can also drop back in pass coverage and move around the defense really successfully. And he's been just fantastic in that role. Against the run, against the pass, he's so dynamic as a player that they can do so many things with him. And his leadership has been really, really valuable to this Wolfpack defense that really needed it, needed some different voices. Obviously, returned Sean Brown and Caden Fordham. They're the defensive captains. Although Brown just missed the Campbell game and Sloan took his place as the second defensive captain alongside Fordham. And that Fordham and Sebastian Harsh tandem has just been devastating on opposing quarterbacks, not necessarily putting massive sack numbers up, but making things very frustrating for opposing offenses, which I think was not something that NC State totally expected out of that duo. But Harsh was so dominant during fall camp that I don't think his performance has been that much of a surprise, at least not to me, based on the way that they were talking about him. But Sloan definitely kind of came out of the woodwork in terms of how talented he is. He's put himself on the map as a potential player that could find a role at the next level, or just be a very solid college player in his last year of eligibility here for the Wolfpack. Finally, we'll finish with another veteran, a guy who played a lot of college football, didn't catch a lot of passes, but that's not his job. Tight end Cody Hardy is the definition of a blocking tight end. His role doesn't show up a ton in the stat sheet, although Doran and Roper are finding ways to get him involved. Got him that 37-yard touchdown against Campbell, sort of like a reward for what he's done in the blocking game, because he's been incredible. He's brought a tough mindset to that very veteran heavy group between him, Justin Jolie, the superstar tight end, and another veteran in Dante Daniels, who's more of a blocking option. And that group has really come on for the Wolfpack. They've often graded out, according to PFF, as better than the offensive line in the blocking scheme. Much of that is Hardy's responsibility. He's got an 85.7 overall offense grade for PFF and an 80.7 run block grade on the season. Just fantastic numbers for a tight end. Dave Doran has raved about his performances throughout the season. He's often like one of the first guys he brings up after games. And Hardy's just willing to do whatever it takes to win. And that's such a valuable thing. I don't think anybody expected him to, be this integral to this offense, given that he was a transfer from an FCS program in Elon just down the road. A guy that they kind of just took a shot on, and a culture changer in terms of this offense. He's brought that toughness that I already mentioned, and really made this tight end group a force to be reckoned with in the ACC. Those are your three biggest surprises. Obviously, some more players have gotten off to fantastic starts in the stat sheet that you might think are more surprising than I did, and I didn't get to them. Sorry. But we'll have more content right here. You can keep it here with the NC State Insider Podcast. Find more episodes on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel. You can find stories and more content at my Twitter account at Sennett Tucker and the website's Twitter account at Wolfpack on SI. We'll see you tomorrow for another episode. Later.